Okay, first of all, I'd like to give all honor to God, and because I know right now my dad is looking down on me saying, hey, you made it to the big top, you know? Because, you know, as an architect, you know, in the 60s, as a black architect in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, it was hard. So he went through a lot, and I'm just here to say a little bit about him. And first, I'm just going to read this little bit off of this card, and you've probably heard it or seen it on the board. But my dad, Alonzo Robinson, who was AIA, architect, designer in charge of the Milwaukee Fire Department in 1960, born in March 5th, 1923, Asheville, North Carolina. Military service, 1943 to 1944, United States service, 1944 to 1946, overseas in Okinawa, and rank as a technical sergeant. And while there, he played basketball. He kind of fumbled around with photography, and he took pictures. And I know he had a lot of Polaroid photos back then. And we saw photos of my dad when he played a lot of basketball in Okinawa. But he was fortunate enough that while at Okinawa, he designed the barracks, makeshift barracks in Okinawa. My dad also attended Howard University, 1946 to 1951. Degree in architecture from November 1952 to 1967. He came to the Bureau of Bridges and Buildings, City of Milwaukee, and he came under Mayor Frank Zeidler, who was a socialist mayor, and brought him in. He designed the Milwaukee Fire Department headquarters, and Alonzo Robinson was the first black registered architect in the state of Wisconsin, City of Milwaukee. He went on to design Central City Plaza, numerous churches and buildings in the city of the county of Milwaukee. So I have these cards. They have a QR code on the back of them. There's some up here up front. So after we get done speaking, you're able to take a look at the table and some of the things that we put up in regards to Central City Plaza, as well as some of the works that my father has done. So you'll see them on the front. And I just want to also say thank you to the AIA, WiscoNOMA, Chris Rute for, you know, getting this thing started, along with Erik Vogel and some other people. And I really want to say, I don't see him in the room tonight, but Tim Askins, he was really huge in presenting the information to the Historical Preservation Committee at City Hall for my dad. And he did a wonderful job, and I'm really impressed. But the whole story is just mushrooming from one day to another. Because like when I started out, it was like, okay, hey, people came to me and said, hey, why don't you try to get your dad's name on a street sign? And then I was thinking about it. I said, a street sign? I think my dad designed a lot of buildings. We need to try to work on getting his name on a building, not on a street sign. You know, so I went over to the Milwaukee Fire Department. I talked to Chief Lipsky, and I said, hey, you know, I'm a retired police officer. I worked over at the police administration building for years. But, you know, it's funny. My dad designed this building, and I love to take a look at the architectural design of the fire department. So he went into his office, and while in his office, he pulled out the plans. And when he opened it up, all the plans had my dad's name on there, Alonzo Robinson, designer in charge. And I'm like, wow. I said, well, hey, Chief, you know, being I'm a retired cop, maybe you can let me go over to the Safety Academy and take a look at some of those files in the Historical Preservation Room. So I went over there and took a look, and we're looking through all the photos and seeing photos of different people that were at the groundbreaking, but I did not see my dad. So I'm like, wow, okay, no dad. You're not in here. So then I kept looking and, you know, got some of the photos, and I said, well, hey, you know, I went back to the the fire chief, and I said, hey, we got to try to figure out a way to get his name on this building. And so Chief Lipsky, myself, WiscoNOMA, Erik Vogel, Chris Rute, we all worked together. Claiborne Benson from the Wisconsin Historical Black Society. We all got together and we put our heads together, and we was able to make it happen along with Mayor Barrett. And then at the time, it's kind of a funny story because I was at a homicide revival, and I was taking pictures for the newspaper, and I saw the automatic president, Cavalier Johnson. And I said, hey, Cavalier, how about we try to get my dad's name on the fire department that he designed? And he said, I said, yeah, he was the first black architect. He says, no problem. Don't even worry about it. You don't have to go through all this committee and paperwork. Just, I'll talk to the fire chief and we'll make this happen. And it happened. So it was a great thing. I'm not going to take up too much time. We have other speakers. I will be around for a Q&A after that. And we'll talk some more about my dad after they talk.
Thank you, Kim. Yeah, I've heard the story about your father several times since we've been working together on his legacy, and it never ceases to amaze me how much I learn each time I hear the story. And I think it's important that we kind of slide through some of the other buildings that Alonzo Robinson was involved with throughout the city, and some of those are identified here. And contextual modernism is, he made it fit into the neighborhood. We have a church in a residential neighborhood. We have the Polish Association of America from 1971. And no job too small is so critical because he was willing to offer his services at a reduced rate, no doubt, to serve his constituency, if you will. And of course, here we are with the Alonzo Robinson Milwaukee Fire Department Administration Building, and that happened in 2021, recent history. To fully appreciate Central City Plaza and its significance in the city of Milwaukee and its history, one has to go back and recognize what the city of Milwaukee looked like in 1960 and in the 70s. Segregation, redlining that promoted disinvestment in the older parts of the city, urban renewal, aka urban removal, and the freeway construction all work together to create the story that we're confronted with here. This is the site bounded by yellow, so this process, the Great Migration that brought many African Americans to the northern cities, including Milwaukee, where they really ended up relegated to those poorer and older parts of the city. And they oftentimes lived in an area called Bronzeville, which was a real neighborhood in the city. It was the heart and soul of the black community. And as you can see through the red slash through that is where the freeway cut this neighborhood in pieces. And this kind of even more evidence of 1937. We have a real complete neighborhoods that in urban removal in the 1963 rendered a lot of these homes gone. And then of course the freeway served to further eliminate a lot of the neighborhood feel. So it was important for the Central City Plaza really was an effort to serve the community that it was located in. And so we see it's the first black operated, black financed, black designed, and black owned shopping center in Wisconsin. So let's just take a look at a couple of these buildings. The main southeast building, a two-story building, originally shops, offices, and even a bowling alley. The northwest building is the motel building. It was a 56-room motel that was designed for Milwaukee's Black Business District and visitors to it. Current use, Salvation Army is providing very much needed emergency lodging in that facility. And then the North 6 building, the little postage stamp of a building there, really was the one that kind of started this whole thing off. But I think it's important to just sort of walk through and take a look at each of these buildings for their significance. This new Formalist landmark that it became. Later tenants were NAACP and the United Negro College Fund, city and state agencies, but currently owned by Kalen Haywood. The Masterpiece Lodge to Emergency Center shelter is owned by the Salvation Army now, and they are operating and serving their community in a very real way. And finally, we come to the little building on the corner, the former Pago Liquor Store, the Hilliard Health Center, and later it was even the headquarters for the Yellow Cab Company. Isn't that amazing? But it went fallow, and the Salvation Army purchased that property and that building in hopes of expanding their services. So that kind of brought me to this point. Milwaukee Preservation Alliance discovered that a demolition permit had been applied for this building here. And we felt that from a mid-century modern, some of the story behind it, it was worth investigating and potentially saving. So in December of 2024, Emma Rudd, the executive director for Milwaukee Preservation Alliance, MPA, put together a application for temporary designation. And so that was in play to stay the demolition permit that was being applied for. City of Milwaukee has an ordinance that states any demolition permit, we put a 15-day hold on it to allow time to potentially see if this building might be of some significance. And it does. And one of the things, so December 23rd, 2 days before Christmas, city offices were going to close on the 24th and 25th. The 26th was going to be the 15th day. I got a call from Tim Askin at the Historic Preservation Commission office and said, we need somebody to file a permanent designation application, otherwise the temporary is not going to do us any good. And the demo permit's going to be issued in 2 days' time. So this was afternoon on the 23rd. I live in the East Town area of Milwaukee, so I was hop, skip, and a jump down to City Hall, filed the document, signed it, and then we waited until January for the Historic Preservation Commission to hear the temporary designation. And we heard stories from both sides of the room, the preservationists there, and certainly the Salvation Army had some good plans for expanding their services to serve the community. And, but it garnered a lot of media attention, as you can see. In January of 2025, Historic Preservation Commission did award temporary designation to this building, which stayed the demolition permit, thankfully. And the memory of the loss of the Forest Home Library was still fresh in my mind from 2021. And I said, you know, I know the Salvation Army is a powerful organization. And just like this Forest Home Library, the Medical College of Wisconsin was a formidable entity, then doing good work in the community. So we lost that one because we didn't garner the community support that we needed. So I reached out to my friends at WiscoNOMA, and a few days later, Taruna from WiscoNOMA reached out to me and said, how can we help? And we assembled a coalition of folks that would put it all together. And at that point, I'd like to invite Erik and Erik up so they can kind of present from their perspective the story of how we got the community engagement and that sort of thing. So Erik?
Which one?
Erik with a K.
Please.
Erik? Wait, go ahead. Start us off. We got a couple slides in there, you know.
So I'd like to begin by thanking Seth Terhar, who couldn't be here this evening. Seth is our Director of Operations at WiscoNOMA, Wisconsin, and he's a graduate of MyEd. And he really was the force and momentum behind the grassroots advocacy that made this all possible. So I'm not going to talk a long time, but I see some faces in the audience, and it makes me really happy to know that they're here. This coalition Started with 3 organizations and grew very quickly, and we're starting to touch the rest of the country with this subject. So Kim is going down to the NOMA conference in Miami to talk about this. I'm going out to LA to talk at the Docomomo International Conference. The rest of the country is really interested in the success of this process. I can't guarantee that it's repeatable, but I can tell you why I think this process worked and why the Forest Home Library didn't. A lot of that has to do with a coalition of partners. So we're all small nonprofits. We believe deeply in what we do, but we're not always, because of our size and limited capacity, able to reach into the neighborhoods where all these buildings exist and understand those neighborhoods and work with people at the grassroots level. So very early on, this coalition said, we need to engage people in the neighborhood. Kim was a good friend. We'd been working together on this subject. He said, well, I know some people. I know some people right on the street. And so he did a survey of the neighborhood and got us in touch with some people who were living and working there. That helped us reach into the community that cared. So when we started to do that, we realized the intersection, the healthy and amazing intersection in Milwaukee between people in the community and the politicians who represent them. So I know what you hear in the news may not be very uplifting today. It might seem like a huge top-down process, but I will say that in our communities, this one, grassroots still has power. And I think we saw that happen largely because people who volunteer, I'm going to mention LaShondra Vernon, who worked for the Greater Milwaukee Foundation, who's on the Bronzeville Advisory Committee. It was amazing. I was talking to her about a grant proposal on the phone, and she said, well, what kind of work is your organization doing? I said, well, we're really trying to preserve Alonzo Robinson Jr.'s work. He's the first registered black architect in the state of Wisconsin. We're really passionate about this. In fact, we've got this ongoing advocacy issue, to save Central City Plaza. It's on the corner of 6th and Walnut, and I explained a little bit about it, and there was this pause, and I didn't hear much from her. She said, well, I live at 6th and Walnut. I said, well, the building is right there. She said, oh, hold on a second. She pulled back her curtain. She said, is that the building you mean? I said, yeah, that's the building I'm talking about. And so she became an instant advocate for us. So she took our cause to the Bronzeville Advisory Committee, and that credibility then went to the alderpersons. And all of a sudden, we had a kind of coalition both within city government and within the community. If you have that, then the TV cameras come, because that's a story. Without that, you're an interested group of preservationists, but you're not embedded in the community. You don't represent the hearts and minds of the people who really need representation. So that was a great learning experience for us. The second thing that made this a success, which didn't with Children's Wisconsin, is the willingness of the organization of the Salvation Army to listen. I have never had an experience with an organization like this. It's not that they opened their arms to us right away when we objected to their demolition permit and said, oh, come on in. We had to validate we had to have good reasons, and we had to be polite. We had to want to engage and listen to their mission. And then we had a chance. They listened to our objections or our suggestions with really open ears. And I have not had that kind of an experience in an advocacy position where usually people take sides right away. So I really want to thank you for being willing to listen. And at the end of our process, the Salvation Army, in an email exchange where we were thanking all of the partners, said, no, thank you for educating us about the buildings that we owned. No one had ever taken the time. There was no mechanism for us to learn about the architectural history of our neighborhood, much less the building that we were in. Thank you for doing that. So it was like a great mission accomplishment. You can imagine how that felt for a small organization to have that kind of recognition. And so what happens from here? You're going to hear the story from Erik about how the design process is going to change, how they've learned about adaptive reuse and are going to start to take that small, and if that's not, the slide isn't up right now. I want to just go back for a second. If that's not the best looking liquor store in the city, I'd like to know which one, which is the choice. The National Liquor Bar and its sign are gone, so I'm saying this is the best. So we did press conferences. We got into the news. I'm going to let Erik speak to the history, because it's a phenomenal story about the making of the building, and about the Black community that rallied in the early '70s to have this job done. It's an amazing story. I'm just very glad to be a part of this story becoming not only a local news story, but a national subject. So thanks for coming tonight.
Thank you so much, and thanks to everyone for being here tonight and helping us tell this story. This really, for me and for our organization, just kind of hits us in the heart of what we do. And, this is information from the nomination for the historic designation. And so for all of these reasons, the position in the neighborhood, its embodiment of these distinguishing characteristics of contextual modernism, and the connection with Alonzo Robinson Jr., who he obtained his license in 1954, and you should know that the number of Black architects in this state, in this country, it took, I believe, Walter Wilson, it was almost a decade later that he became the second licensed architect, licensed Black architect in the state. So this is not a ancient history. This is a recent history. This is a living history. And so for us, the way that this connects to our mission and vision it is in three parts. So the first way that we understand it, actually, so the first way we understand this is understanding our legacy. So I call it past, present, future, right? So our legacy is understanding where we come from, who came before us, the history of minority architects in this state, in this country. And looking at this next slide, there's a quote from Whitney Young Jr., and this is it's pretty famous, from the AIA National Convention in 1968, where Whitney Young, famous civil rights activist, was talking about how we have to have people who are as committed to doing the right thing and educating about the past. And so in that time, in the 58 years since that speech, which was 14 years after Alonzo Robinson got his license, the percentage of Black architects in this country went from just 0.5% to just 2% as of the last Council of Architectural Registration Boards. Now that does not look like our country, does not look like the population of people that we serve. And this process of talking about our legacy, talking about the history of this country, if you think that that doesn't make a difference, this process, the way that this building, this complex was threatened with demolition was not because the client, not because the owner didn't care. It was because they simply didn't know the history. So that process of communication and education really does make a difference. And it has turned into this wonderful grassroots community effort. The second part of this is engaging the present. So our mission is really tied up in advocacy, in understanding where our significant buildings are and making sure we don't lose them, and also looking for the ways that these buildings can go into the future. And that serves our current membership and the whole community at large. And then finally, it connects to nurturing our future, which is understanding how young people can learn about this history, but also participate in shaping it. And so this gets us to our mission with Project Pipeline. and empowering young people, connecting mentors, designing for community, and addressing this idea of design justice. And we always look for projects that are connected to the community to serve as the central focus of each year's summer camp, and that's what we hope to do this summer too, and potentially even involve the Central City Plaza, and certainly telling that story of Alonzo Robinson. So with that, my portion's complete, but I thank you again so much for coming and for listening, and for everyone else who presented.
Okay, thank you all so much for your work to document this process here in the presentation today, and really for everything that you've done to honor and preserve the legacy of Alonzo Robinson Jr. Thank you. Now I'll open it up to some questions. Would love to have some questions from the audience, and I might kick it off with the first question, and I'll address this to Kim, because I think I'm really interested in the wonderful relationship that you had with your father, and the relationship that your father had with you and the rest of your siblings. And I want you to talk a little bit about the way that maybe architecture was instilled in your childhood, or were there ways that your dad involved you in his process of designing and creating, and just hearing a little bit more about the relationship that you have with him.
Okay, that's a long story, but I'll keep it short. I got to say that, coming up, I was the youngest of 3 boys, and I had a younger sister, Jean. I'm Kim, and I had a brother, Ronald, and I had a brother, Wayne. My older brother, Wayne and Ronald, they did drafting with my dad at the office. I was playing basketball and running track. When I was a kid, my dad bought us building blocks. Back then, they were the regular blocks, and we built things with the blocks, and we would he would build us a railroad train up in the attic where he had an office. So he had an office in the home up in the attic, and then he'd have like trains set up, and he'd show us how to run trains and do race cars and things of that nature. And then he always stated to us that, follow your dream. He would say, I follow my dream. My dream was, when he was a kid, he grew up in Wilmington, Delaware. They came from Asheville, but they lived most of his childhood was in Wilmington, Delaware. In the house that he was in, the floor was crooked. So when he would play marbles with his sister, the marble would roll across the floor, and he would always say, I think I want to be an architect. So that's when he went away to school to Delaware State College for Colors in the early 30s. And the motto then was go forth and serve. And that's what my father did. He believed in serving others. And I know they showed a couple of different buildings. And I know I went into the Fast and Friendly food store on Juneteenth Day to get some ice. We were giving away free food outside. And I met the owner, Jim. And Jim he said, when I met your dad, I was 29 years old. I was a foreigner here in America. I could get no one to design my building for me. But then I met your dad. And your dad did it for such a good price that I couldn't go wrong. And I was able to establish my business. And it's amazing because that grocery store, 311 West Locust, is still there, Fast and Friendly. Mm-hmm. So it kind of served as a community and what my dad stood for. But he always told us to follow our dream, and he just, told us to do different things. So like I said, my middle brother, Ronald, he was a draftsman, but I did all my drawing at crime scene. I was a crime scene detective, so I worked for the Milwaukee Police Department. So the drawing that I did was drawing crime scenes and putting chalk around dead bodies. But I do want to say this, that also, I put my full support behind the Center of Hope project. The Central City Plaza buildings are more than brick and draft lines. They are my father's heart made visible. Life is drawn out on a scale. By helping others, we help our community grow. Preserving the historic buildings in the new development and supporting the Center of Hope honors the work of the Salvation Army, my father's work, his faith in people, and the opportunities he built for the community and future African American architects around the world. And that's why tonight I invited the Salvation Army to be here tonight to hear this. Let's give a hand to them, because I think they're doing a wonderful job over on 6th and Walnut, and by agreeing to work with us and work with the different architectural organizations, as Erik expressed earlier, is very positive. It's going to be positive for the city. So the people that are being helped over there at the Center for Hope will be a very positive thing, that they'll be able to see that, hey, this building that we're being helped in was designed by a Black architect.
Yeah.
Any other questions from the crowd?
So how has the Salvation Army pivoted now? So the small building is going to remain.